Welcome back into the channel, everyone. Today's hot location is Onslaught's Citadel, which, just like Onslaught, will double your other ongoing effects at that location. So I want to highlight a few different decks you can play to utilize that, but also this video just fits if you are a fan of ongoing decks, then hopefully you can use one of these 4 decks for your own good. I think all of them have their own unique perks and what they're good at. So I'm going to go through 4 different decks here. The 4th really just a concept. Don't have an actual deck because I'm missing some cards. But go through 4 decks that you should be playing on this hot location, or if you just like ongoing decks in general. So the first is actually using Onslaught. It's an Onslaught and Omega Red deck. So Omega Red is an ongoing. If you already, if you're winning it by 10 power at that location, you get +4 to other locations. So there's a really good curve of Omega Red on turn 4, Iron Man to double your current location's power, and then Onslaught. You do that combo, you get +8 power at other locations with Omega Red. Or again, if you're doing this on Omega or Onslaught's Citadel, the hot location, then you'll get that quadrupled. So you'll get +16 power at other locations. Really powerful stuff. This deck is filled in with some really other, solid staple cards, especially in the 2-drop region, but we're using Ant-Man as our 1-cost ongoing card. We're using Invisible Woman because I actually like to hide Omega Red and Onslaught behind Invisible Woman, so they don't expect that big power spike to come to other locations. It's a really good combo. Then I'm using Mojo, of course, great ongoing card that if both players have 4 cards at this location, +6 power, he's a 2/2. Also pretty good to hide behind Invisible Woman. Using Armor and Colossus. Then I'm using Captain America just for the solid +1 power at other locations, which are other cards at that location, which is great. We are only using 1 on reveal ability, which is Spectrum, so she just on reveal gives your ongoing cards +2 power. She's an insane card with ongoing cards, and she's just a solid. But since I'm only using 1 on reveal, I am using Cosmo to turn off other on reveal abilities, ideally my opponent's on reveal abilities. So between Cosmo and Armor, Armor can shut down some destroy decks, and then Cosmo can shut down on reveal decks, or also some destroy decks because they won't actually be able to destroy the things that they want, which is great. And lastly, I am using Super SKRULL. I just pulled him. If you don't have him, that's alright, but he is really crazy in ongoing decks. He copies all ongoing effects of your opponent, which could be a bad thing in some ways. Like let's say they just play Lizard or Ebony Maul or something like that. It could be bad, but in the most case, he's copying really powerful stuff, either ongoing cards that we're using, same type of cards, or Devil Dinosaur, or Darkhawk, or Ronin, etc. You can copy some really, really big ongoing abilities, and then he will get all of that. If you play him on Onslaught Citadel as well, you just get even more. It's just, he doubles that again, so he gets all their abilities twice and gets crazy power. So this card in general is a blast to play in that hot location that is on today, Onslaught's Citadel. But if you don't have him, that's okay. I'm not putting him in all these decks because I know a lot of people don't have Super SKRULL. So let's jump to the second deck. Alright, if you're familiar with my channel at all, you know I love Wong and Spectrum are 2 of my favorite cards. This is called Wong Going. It's a pretty generic deck that I've seen a lot of. Wong essentially is a key piece in this deck, and you're only using 1 on reveal card. So Wong doubles on reveal abilities, and the only one we're using is Spectrum. She on reveal gives all your other ongoing cards +2 power, but on top of Wong, it's +4 power. Wong included, he has an ongoing ability. So this deck is really, really solid, and I just fill it in with other really solid ongoing cards. Nothing crazy spectacular in this. I'm using Ant-Man again, Quinjet, literally just for the ongoing ability on 1. You don't need to use it. You could replace this with something else. Mojo, Armor, Colossus. I'm using Lizard in here as well. This will be a good 5 power. We will get plus more, or if he gets minus, it's not the worst thing that's ever happened. I'm using Mr. Fantastic, Punisher, Captain America, Wong, and then I'm using Professor X as well. So the deck really is about getting 1 or 2 locations locked down early and then surprising the other location with Spectrum, and she'll buff your entire board. So you can really win some shocking games on top of Wong with Spectrum. Really solid deck. And the really fun part about this deck is if you don't have a lot of these cards, let's say you're missing Mojo yourself, right? Let's say you're missing, I don't know, anything, Quinjet, etc. You can really fill this in with a lot of other ongoing cards, right? You could just put other generic ongoing cards that I had, like in the other deck. I had Invisible Woman, I had Super SKRULL. Both of those could go into this deck very easily, but there's just even more options, and I'm trying to keep this one a little bit basic. But obviously you could put Iron Man, you could put Onslaught. You can put all those cards in there. So just fill in really anything around. As long as you have Wong and Spectrum, I mean, you can fill in any ongoing cards and get a decent curve. And this is a really solid deck to play on Onslaught Citadel, but also just in general. Really good deck for climbing. Let's get to the third deck. Alright, the third deck is a Cerebro deck. Cerebro is a really interesting ongoing card. Your highest power cards get +2 power is its ongoing effect. So you kind of need, obviously, this card, but you also really need Mystique for these style of decks. She is a 3/0 just like Cerebro, but her on reveal is you copy the ongoing ability of the last card you played, so you can get double the Cerebro, which is great. This is called Cerebro 2. So it's cards with 2 power only. There is Cerebro 3, and there's other Cerebros as well, but the main point is you need to have all your cards have the same power. So you want to, don't play anything that's going to potentially give other cards higher power, right? So if you play like Rocket Raccoon in this deck, he could potentially get +2 power, and then he would solely get this Cerebro buff. We want every card in our deck to get this buff. So we keep this deck clean with just 2 powered things. With the exception of Blue Marvel. So Blue Marvel has an ongoing ability that gives all your other cards +1 power, but what that can do is put all of your cards up to 3, including him. That's great. But if this gets doubled, that's where it can be problematic, in the sense that just he would stay at a 3 power, so only your other cards would. So if you play Blue Marvel on Onslaught Citadel, just remember, that's great. All your other cards are now going to be 4. He will not be, so he won't get that buff. Outside of that, it's nothing to worry about. It's really, really solid in this deck, and you get a ton of power. And if you miss Cerebro, playing Mystique on Blue Marvel is another great way to get a really wide board buff. It's a really fun, cheap deck, so I'm using Iceman. 2 power is the key here, with no way to get additional power. So Iceman, Korg, Nightcrawler. There's other cards you could use, but I think those are my 3 favorite to use for this deck. You know, I think they're the 3 really solid 1-drops that are just consistently going to do good things. Korg can possibly screw your opponent's draw, Iceman can screw your opponent's hand, and Nightcrawler can shift to different locations. I'm using Goose and this awesome variant I have. Goose is incredible for this deck. The only card that we can't play on top of this location is Blue Marvel. So that's the only card we can't play. Everything else we could play, even where Goose is. So it's great. Just shuts down our opponent. Won't let them play 4, 5, or 6s. That's great. Mr. Sinister is amazing for this deck. He creates a clone of himself, so it's 2 drops. Same thing with Brood. That is 3 cards with 2 power. Absolutely incredible. Scorpion, amazing card. Reduce your opponent's power. Total output that they'll have in their hand, and still at the 2 power thing. And then we got Mr. Fantastic and Storm, who's really good as well for shutting down a location. This deck's great. And playing Cerebro and Mystique on top of Onslaught Citadel is awesome, but just playing this deck in general is really fun. You get a lot of good power, and you can just spread that power out. You can normally fill your board up pretty nicely and get 4 or 6 power on every one of your cards, or even 7 power if you get Blue Marvel, and just get a really large, successful board that is filled with really high power. Really fun deck, and doubling all these ongoing abilities is even better. Let's get to the 4th deck. Alright, so the 4th deck, I'm not actually highlighting a specific deck because I don't own Dr. Doom or Ultron. They are both pretty key for Patriot decks, but the 4th deck I suggest if you're looking for an ongoing deck, or if you're looking more particularly to play something on Onslaught Citadel, Patriot decks are where it's at. Patriot is an ongoing, your cards with no abilities have +2 power. So you want to play cards that have no abilities. Brood and Mr. Sinister are examples because they create clones or broods of themselves that have no abilities. They're both great. And there's a bunch of others, Shocker is great, Wasp is great, The Thing is great, Debris is great. She'll make stones everywhere, rocks everywhere that will get this buff. And you want to play Patriot, obviously, on the doubling location. And then you could play something like Blue Marvel still, or Onslaught to double this again. But your big finishers are Dr. Doom and Ultron. Dr. Doom creates 2 5-cost Doom bots that don't have abilities, so Patriot buffs those. Then that'll put a 5-power card at one location, and then 2 7s or 9s if you Mystique Patriot, which is great. And Ultron fills the entire board, every other location that you didn't play him at, with 1-power drones that have no abilities, which Patriot buffs. If I had either of those, I'd be playing a whole lot more Patriot, and especially on Onslaught Citadel. So these are the 4 decks that I suggest. There are plenty more. I mentioned Darkhawk. I don't have him. I mentioned Devil Dinosaur. He's kind of been done a lot. So there's other decks that you can play on Onslaught Citadel as well, but I just wanted to highlight personally that these are 4 decks that I enjoy on Onslaught Citadel, especially on this as a hot location, but just also 4 really good ongoing decks if that's what you're looking for. Hopefully you guys enjoy these decks, enjoy the video. If you did, leave a like, leave a comment, and remember to keep on snapping and staying subscribed. Catch you next time.